these are the three ingredients to create an origin story. We want the first act, that painful moment in your life where you're like, I can't take it anymore, to the second act, which is like your Rocky montage. I started putting together something that was better, something that would work for me and it would last. And then finally, I experienced the mountaintop. And now I realized that what I learned can help so many other people other than just myself. And that's what I'm here today to teach you.
Hi, and welcome to the Conscious Marketer Podcast. This is Richard here. Hi, Kylie.
Hey there.
And we are joined by Kyle Gray. I'm going to pass it over to Kylie, who's going to introduce him today. And we have another storyteller on the line, and we love to talk story and share about how to bring that into your marketing.
Yeah, super cool. Super happy to have Kyle here. He's actually taken me through his story process, so I'm quite familiar with his work, and it's really interesting, fascinating, useful, helpful, and he's particularly good at helping you do it with stage talks, which is something that I'm not good at all. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, he's your guy. So he's a story strategist, he's an author. As I understand it, he works with coaches, startups, and influencers to help them use story to communicate their unique value, which is something we're always looking for, create connection and trust, which story is so good at. And he's really great with storytelling, with marketing, and helping you to find the right story and also to make more sales. Kyle is a prolific writer and storytelling person. He even wrote a poem on the spot when I was with him on his podcast. He's got 2 books, Selling with Story and The Story Engine. And he also has a podcast that you might want to check out. It is called The Story Engine Podcast. And he brings some of the greatest storytellers in the world on that podcast. And I had a super fun time with him there as well. So thank you, Kyle, for being here. I'm so happy to have you.
Kylie and Richard, thank you so much for having me. It's such a big honor to be able to speak with other leaders in this space and really dive deep into storytelling. And it's really exciting to be on a podcast with 2 different hosts. I just host my own show, and I'm hard enough to deal with by myself. And so there's a real art to having multiple voices here that I really think you guys do a great job at.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes we interrupt each other. We try to keep it like toggle back and forth, but when there's 2 hosts, it can be a little tricky and a little more fun. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. We always like to start with the backstory. So can you tell us how what are your humble beginnings and how did you end up becoming a storytelling expert?
There's a couple of different threads that have happened over maybe the last over 15 years that have led to me becoming a storytelling expert. The first thread, when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I was a singer-songwriter, and I was certain that the only way I was going to live a good life was by being a musician. And I definitely wanted to write songs, that were different and interesting and impactful. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to do that in those times and ended up kind of burning myself out and souring myself on the art by just having so much expectations. A few years later, I got hired to work in storytelling for a startup called WP Curve. They were growing quickly and they had a very strong content marketing strategy. The host was the founder was a prolific storyteller and could just write blogs like a beast. And he just threw me into the deep end of his business. And I had to learn not just to be able to write fast, but to be able to communicate and articulate what makes a good story so that I could hire other people to create content and expand that. I built up those skills over time, from copywriting to sales to ultimately at the point where I saw how people were using storytelling from the stage to grow their business as a tool. And I became so enchanted by it. It reminded me exactly of getting up on stage and giving a performance. And there was just so much alignment there that I became obsessed and dedicated. And then there is a second thread here that over the time as my career was expanding, my health was contracting. I had an autoimmune and a gut health condition through a lot of my 20s that really reduced the quality of my life. And I didn't understand what the problem was or what was going on. And I can remember being at a workshop helping experts position themselves to be speakers and to get on more stages and to get their message out there. And it happened to be filled with health and wellness experts. And I started learning about gut health, Chinese medicine, regenerative medicine, and started working with a lot of people like this, knowing that they needed my services and I needed their help. And this became the foundation for a transformation of my life. Getting my gut health in order allowed me to get my mindset in order. And I started to see in a lot of ways, especially working on both my mental and physical health, that I was using storytelling to persuade myself in the same ways that I use storytelling to persuade others from the stage, and that the very similar techniques to create an experience and to inspire action could be used to inspire action in ourselves, to create clarity, or do just the opposite, to sabotage and block ourselves. And by combining this passion for expression with my passion for my own health and authenticity, my definition of what storytelling is and what we do with it is a lot deeper than just how do I introduce myself in the first few minutes on a podcast.
That's great. And it sounds like kind of like your hero's journey has been through healing and health, but it's nice that you could also, as you're going through that process, help the people to tell their story so that they could reach more people. It's kind of like your healers also became the people that became your clients. Is that right?
It is. And my disease became my healer and my teacher in a lot of ways. I remember the first person, like a coach that I had when I was really in the depths of this, he was like, hey, maybe Hashimoto's disease is your superpower. And I was like, get out of here. Never talk to me again. And really more and more, it took me from being a copywriter of just, I'm everybody's copywriter, just another, like, find me on Upwork or whatever, to somebody who had a unique message for a unique audience that had high ticket problems that was very interesting and relevant to me. And I think that's one of the powerful things about storytelling. Like, it didn't have anything to do with my skill set or my resume, but my life experience brought value to the table that was really, really powerful in that sphere and changed my life.
Yeah. So I know you like to talk about storytelling and sales, and a lot of our audience is probably similar to some of your people. If you found yourself in a room with health experts, alternative health and holistic health experts, then we're probably talking to similar people. And a lot of our people do not like selling and they do not like sales. And we teach them story-based selling and also story-based marketing. But how do you see telling a story to sort of soften the edge of what sales means to a lot of people?
Absolutely. What I like to do in telling a story can do a lot of the job of sales up front before sales is really happening, so that it doesn't have to be such a process on the back end. But there is also something that we need to talk about that, but we'll do later. So one of the most important stories that you can tell is stories of your past clients or the ones that you've worked with. And you want to give your past clients the opportunities in your stories to present the biggest objections, the biggest limiting beliefs that you know your audience has. And by presenting the objections and the beliefs through a client story that looks just like them, that has the same problem, and then you add that in with the context of what you have to teach, how you helped them, and the results that it got, this changes fundamentally how a lot of people think about teaching, from teaching, here's how to get the six-pack abs, to you believe that you can't get abs because you've had all of these problems before. But if you change how you see about this and you open up their ideas for beliefs and possibilities, then they're ready to learn from you. and they're taking notes about what it's like to work with you. And if you were to tell the same story of like, here, I helped this client out through this, I'll give an example of one of these stories. They're taking notes about your offer, where if you talked about this when you made your offer and you made the sales, they would be leaning back and skeptical. So one of the best ways to orient these stories is to start with an objection. One of my clients, his name's Dr. Greg Eckel. He's one of the leading naturopaths in the United States for neurodegenerative disease. And he was putting on an online summit called the Parkinson's Solution Summit. Now, if there's a lot of health experts out there, I imagine some of you know what it is like to know somebody with Parkinson's or a neurodegenerative disease. And if you don't know, their experience with their doctor is very commonly they go every 6 months and the doctor tells them they're getting worse and they have no options and take more medicine. And if that's your reality, and if that's what you've been hearing and experiencing for a long time, there's no way you're just going to hop on a free summit with Greg and be open to eventually spending like 5 figures or more to go out and visit him and try these cutting edge, different kind of processes. And so we needed a story to open people up for the sale. And we created one around the objection. I'm going to be Greg right now, just to give you that example. One of my clients, Bill, and of course we changed his name, came into my clinic after being tired of being told he was just getting worse after every single visit to his doctor. I told him, I think we can dig a little bit deeper and find something else going on. I took him through some labs and some processes that he had never tried before and his doctor had never mentioned. And we found that heavy metal toxicity, not Parkinson's, was behind most of his symptoms, which means he was treating the wrong problem. And now Bill left my clinic with many more options to get in control of his quality of life and his health. And so just in that simple story, it opened people up so that during this time, it created a powerful online stream of revenue for a brick and mortar clinic. It overcame the objections. And instead of having, by the time that they got on the sales calls in the past, people would be kicking the tires and asking, well, do I need every single supplement? And now they were ready to go. They were enrolled and they saw the bigger picture behind it, which is exactly, we want our stories to do the heavy lifting, to make the sales process just, we want people by the time we make our offer to be like, I thought you would never ask.
Yeah, I really love this. I like the idea of taking an objection and figuring out how a client testimonial can overcome that. Like that one, if you don't hear anything else from Kyle here, that's amazing idea just on one way to use story, especially if you're presenting something where somebody is skeptical. I know I like to talk about how we can create trust and connection with audiences. And I think one of your teachings is around how to use your own story to do that. I'm kind of curious because there's so many different ways to tell your own story. How can you tell it in a way that actually does generate that trust and connection, and rather than have it be just about you or even just about them, but it creates the authenticity?
Absolutely. This is an origin story. The kind of stories that I was just talking about before, those are success projection, and we'll teach those or use those when we're teaching. But we need to earn their trust first, which is where the origin story comes in. This is a story that its use is to say to your audience, hey, I understand exactly what you're going through, and I have a shortcut to get you the solution to the problem. And this is something that most people don't expect, because they do think, oh, my story's about me, or I'm just going on and on about me. And it seems like the smarter and more experienced you get, the more entrenched in that idea you get for some reason, which is a shame. But if you understand your story with a deeper purpose to create the trust and to take your audience on a journey, we can reverse engineer our story, just like you saw with the objections. And so here's what I like to do with my clients, and this is what we did with Kylie earlier. I start by asking them about their clients' problems and situations, and we dig deeper. We ask like, okay, they have a cash flow problem, but how does that impact their family? What's it like if they continue to do this? What's at the core of what they're telling themselves? And we really expand on this. And what I use this as is an emotional compass. Once we get ourselves really immersed in the feelings that our clients are feeling, then I can ask, well, when did you feel like that? And it allows us to access memories that we can't just access when we're in neutral. Like emotional neutral. You can't just sit in front of a blank screen and open up Google Docs and say, let the stories fly, baby. I have them all. We've got to use our emotions to help find the things. And it's not always, oftentimes these are stories that people say, oh, I haven't thought about this, or I never thought to use this as a story. But the important thing is they're changing their perspective of, I'm talking about me, to I'm trying to reflect my client's experience as much as possible and build trust with them. So we do the same thing with what our clients want. If we have 3 clear pain points that we can immerse ourselves in to find that one story moment, then we also want to find the 3 points of success. When in your life were you living the success that your clients want? And how can we demonstrate this in a story? If we can take these 2 scenes and combine them with a process that you went through, with what you did to make it different, with how your values shaped your results, these are the 3 ingredients to create an origin story. We want the first act, that painful moment in your life where you're like, I can't take it anymore, to the second act, which is like your Rocky montage. I started putting together something that was better, something that would work for me and it would last. And then finally, I experienced the mountaintop. And now I realized that what I learned can help so many other people other than just myself. And that's what I'm here today to teach you.
That's so powerful. Yeah, that's super powerful.
Through our own story, we get to walk them through the transformation that we are promising them. Mm-hmm. And when they feel this, the goal of this story, which is very different than what most experts try to make the audience understand them. But this shows the audience that you understand them. It turns it around and allows people to relax and open up to the amazing teaching that you're going to share with us next.
What do you tell people that don't think they have a story? Maybe they're listening to all this and they're like, that's great. I wish I could do it. I want to sell more. I don't want to be sleazy, but nobody wants to hear my story. I don't even think I have one.
Yeah, I'll address this and a unexpectedly similar complaint of, my story is too crazy. I was a soldier and did these wild things and swam down a river and fought an alligator and jumped out of a burning building. Nobody's going to resonate with my crazy story. But here's the thing, and it goes back to there's 2 things at play here. One, you're focused on yourself, which is wrong. Even though we're talking about ourselves, it's never about ourselves. We want to focus on our client and what they need and what they're talking about. And second, when we can focus on their needs, then how the details of our stories, it helps us sort things out. When we're focused on ourselves, we want to tell like every moment and every detail and every heartbreak, and it sometimes becomes a little bit difficult to control. But when we focus on our audience and what their needs are, first of all, like I said earlier, stories tend to come up that you wouldn't naturally just think of on your own or by yourself. And secondly, the feelings of, oh, my stories aren't good enough, become like, a lot of the times the most powerful stories are about like blueberry jam or like talking to your pastor as a kid or whatever, kind of thing. These are the moments that last with us. You don't want people coming up to you and saying, I can't believe you jumped out of a burning building and saved a baby. I could never do that. You want people to say, the same thing happened to me. And so it's actually, most of the people I know are littered with 6-figure stories happening all over the place. Every day, I had a client who was like, I'm so busy, I'm taking the week off to hang out with my daughters in a cabin. And I was like, you should write an open letter to your daughter. There's like a moment here, because he was a CEO and an executive. There's literally like they're just, it's happening all around them, and they don't see these stories appearing just because they don't understand that fundamental purpose of a story, which allows you to actually engage with storytelling instead of just being a rambling person.
That's amazing. And it's kind of interesting because I think some of our clients, they consider themselves introverts,
Oh, yes,
empaths,
yes.
and sometimes we actually find clients that need help with the charisma piece, so they need help figuring out how to build more feeling into their story so that they can connect with their audience. What advice would you give to somebody who needs to learn it and become a
So
better storyteller?
yeah, I think the easiest place is to change how you think about storytelling. A lot of people think that they just need one good story and everything's going to fall in line and that's going to work. I like to think of storytelling like a martial art, and different stories serve different purposes, like different kicks and blocks and punches and movements all serve a specific purpose in a specific moment. There's no single story that's going to solve every problem, and there's no karate chop or Chuck Norris roundhouse kick that's going to win you every single fight that you find. You're going to need to be able to have a repertoire that you can naturally access and execute on. And so, like we've already talked about a couple of moves. There's a story to teach and an objection. There's a story to build the trust. There's tiny statements here that block this. There's tiny movements here that do this. And what I like to do is, by practicing a signature talk, a core 45-minute presentation that becomes the foundation for your message. So you can get on podcasts and speak that, get on stages and speak that. And as you speak, you start to learn the different movements and the different frameworks and understand how to tell stories. And if you continue with me and we go through the iterative process of, maybe you're speaking in front of an audience of acupuncturists one day, and maybe you're speaking in front of an audience of fitness professionals the next day, and how do we adapt our success projection stories? But through this practice, we're practicing our moves, and the people I work with start to notice that all of a sudden they're doing the wax on, wax off, and they're blocking punches with their stories. And just they understand the purpose, which means they're able to listen to their prospects in an absolutely new way. They're much more present with the people. And then instead of having 10,000 stories come to mind, they have the one story come to mind and can start to do this. So the beauty of this is, yes, it can be learned. There are frameworks that can be practiced over time. And ultimately, my goal with the people I work with is not to leave you with a single script of one story. It's to teach you how to naturally construct stories that get results. And there are very simple, clear ways to do this, and to do it without scripts, so that you can just be yourself and hopefully make storytelling one of the most valuable things that you do in your business.
What should people not do in their stories?
That's a great question. One of the things is most people can't separate enough details, and when a lot of times we have origin stories that have a lot of painful moments, for example, we probably just don't have one painful moment. And a lot of people think they need to be like, and I set out on this day, and then my dog died, and then I kept going and things got worse, and then I kept going and my other dog died, and people, it just gets too heavy. But they feel like, because they're so involved in their story and they saw this and it meant so much to them, that they feel the need to tell every single thing that happened, because they've lost track of the purpose. But we just need like one trip to that. We're like sampling little flavors of emotion, and we just need one taste of the painful, and then we need to go get away from that, because people will either dwell too long in one emotion, or another thing that they do is, when they teach, they do tasty tangents. These are things that feel good to you when you teach. They feel like a good idea. They're exciting for you to teach. They're current and they're updated, but they don't actually inspire any kind of decisions or move people in the right direction. But it still, your audience even experiences it as like something that's interesting. A quick example of this is as somebody, a mutual friend of ours I have worked with before, Alex Moscow. He worked with me on a keynote speech and a webinar on how to get $250,000 in clients from your current Facebook friends. And so that was his core promise. And he talks about writing great posts to do that. And he gives good teaching points about how to do this. And in one of the teaching points, he has a picture of one of his events. And he's like, I like to show pictures of my events. And my events have laser lights shooting in every direction and crazy music happening. And I want to create a lot of FOMO for my events. And this is like amazing content. Really good teaching. He loves it. The audience loves it. But guess what? It's not actually reinforcing the core promise. And now people are thinking things like, well, should I go to Alex's event? Do I need lasers at my event? You know, how am I going to create? I don't even have an event right now. And all of a sudden, we're not thinking about getting $250,000 from our Facebook list. We're thinking about, do we need smoke machines? And these little things, this is like a little thing like impact erosion, over teaching that slowly corrode your message, which leaves you at the end of when you talk, everybody gives you applause and nobody takes action or does anything that you want. And you're wondering why. There's 100 little things just like this, like too much emotional detail that, again, when you understand the simple core frameworks, you can cut out a lot of this, which usually means you'll finally stop speaking 10 or 20 minutes over time. Maybe you'll finish a little bit early, and people will be excited about that.
I love that idea of having everything be on point and lead to whatever you want in the end. And that term impact erosion is really powerful. You know, the little things that you don't think matter kind of add up over the end. And what's super funny is it's sometimes the stuff we care about, whether it's like the background or the clothes you're wearing or whatever, the laser. I think that's a funny example. You know, it is becoming more crowded now. And I would say that it's actually harder to stand out more. And I know some of what you do is help people differentiate their work from other people, especially through the teachings. As you're presenting your teachings, how can you kind of naturally, you know, show how your stuff is different so that people see you as one of the best or only solutions rather than just being another person trying to sell something out there, which is quite common these days?
Perfect. I have a move. Like the repertoire of your martial arts, this is definitely a roundhouse kick. This is a great advanced move. What you want to do in these cases, a lot of the time, is you don't want to directly call out your competition or differentiate yourself, but you do want to be aware of why you're different than them. And when you're teaching, one of these moves I like to do is teach the criteria. So you want to provide 3 points for them to look for, and they should only add up to you. And these 3 points should qualify you and disqualify your competition. So it would sound like this. You can hire a storytelling coach to help you get on stages, all of you want, but you need to make sure that they have created content and have been doing their own work and being on stages. You need to make sure that they have also a heart-centered approach and want to transform everything about your business, not just write you a good talk. And third, they need to be about 6 foot tall and have hazel green eyes. You can work with anybody, but they need to have those 3 things in order to do that. And if you can set that up in a way that's more potent and less comedic, this is a great way to block off your competition, separate yourself from them. And it doesn't have to do anything to do with changing your product or discounting yourself or anything like that, which I think is a really powerful way, especially for those who are in crowded marketplaces and want to stand out.
I love that. You have mentioned stories driving action in so many different ways. Almost in every answer, it's like stories get people to do things. And usually those are the things we want them to do related to our products and services. What is it about story from your perspective that drives action in the first place? I've studied a lot of the neuroscience of stories, so that's kind of what I'm getting at. But what do you feel like it is about stories that create a desire in somebody to take action before you even ask them to?
So there's a couple of uses for storytelling. I think it's the most ancient technology. I think it's older than fire. And it is a system that we have practiced over tens of thousands of years to communicate an idea. And usually it's about an action we take or a change we make. There's something important happened that changed us, and we need to express that. And when we can tell a good story, there's definitely ways to tell a bad story, and there's ways to tell a good story. And the more that we can align with this ancient and natural technology that happens, which incorporates all areas of the brain. It's not just passive talking, or just facts and information. We want smell, we want touch, we want feelings, we want aspirations, we want pain and desire, and all of these things together to ignite as much of our brain as possible to take an action and to make a choice. Every story is about a choice that we've made. And so by understanding this and practicing many of these frameworks and techniques, this is starting to really understand and engage with this ancient technology instead of just letting your own mind kind of run around like a beagle, with a strong nose, which I think a lot of people do when they're just lost in the forest of their own experience. And it's the art of really getting that feeling that you have in your heart to land in somebody else's heart. And I think too many of us, we're very prepared to get what we have in our head to maybe land in somebody's head. But I think this was the core thing that allowed us to come together as communities, allowed us to build cultures, build religions, build societies, build laws. We needed to have a story to understand a value, to make a decision, to come to a conclusion. And it continues today. And it's amazing. I feel like it's more valuable and relevant than ever. It's aged like the finest of wines.
It's so interesting to talk to you because it's like almost brings up all these things. I'm like, oh, I knew that, but I forgot this, and oh, that's a new thing. And so it's just really great to talk to you. I'm going to lob kind of I don't know if this is a hard question, but it's something people come to us and say to us sometimes. And I'm curious just your perspective on it. I have a few perspectives myself, and I'm sure Kylie does as well. But sometimes somebody will say, yeah, but if I learn all the story stuff, then I'm just like all the marketing and salespeople. And I'm just starting to manipulate people, and our people are so against manipulation and hard sales, and they're like, well, I don't want my stories to become manipulation. And I think there is some valid point behind this, and I also think that ineffective storytelling that doesn't impact people isn't the right way to go either. So I'm kind of curious what your opinion on this is. So
my harsh answer is my answer for somebody who says that is goodbye. But there's a real problem here. If you're afraid that you're manipulating people with your story, then you're probably doing that. Or you're probably just in your business to make money, and you're probably thinking about yourself. But if you have a story and a vision that connects you with meaning of your life, with a legacy that you actually want to live, I don't think anybody's here to work more or to just make more money by working more. You're not listening to this podcast for that. You want to work less. You want to have a more meaningful life and more impact. And there needs to be more value and presence in everything that you do. And if you have a good story, it's never going to be about, well, I want to be the prettiest man on stage and everybody will love me. It's like, I want to change the world. There's something really important here that's bigger than me. And we got to get you tapped into that, because if you feel like you're manipulating people, then you're not thinking about that, and you're not thinking about your audience. You're thinking about yourself. So these techniques, they can be used for evil too. And guess what? Bad people are using them, and they don't have any of these qualms. And you're sitting here doing nothing, snubbing your nose while your potential clients are getting snake oiled by these people. So you need to use these things. You need to be effective. This is the time, like more than ever, we need leaders at their best, inside and outside, and able to express that, because this world is in such desperate need of leadership and people who can see a vision for a better future. So if you are afraid you're manipulating people, then just bow out until that you can find something that's worth more than just trying to make money. When you want to start leaving a legacy and an impact and a better world, instead of just trying to beef up your monthly earnings.
Yeah, that resonates with me. And I'm sure that our clients fall into the camp of using their story as a force for good, and they just question it sometimes, but that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. So before we wrap it up today, I just want to say this has been incredible. I could talk to you all day about stories and storytelling. I'm super passionate about it, and you obviously are too. What are some storytelling resources that you recommend for people that are kind of just starting out, or maybe medium level, and they want to get advanced?
One of the best places to start, I have a 45-minute course that I usually sell, but I'll give away as a coupon code for free, but helps you create that origin story, that authority story, a story that you can tell in 5 minutes that's going to get people interested and excited to work with you. And I will be sure to share that link with you guys in the show notes of the show. I'm not going to tell you here, because you guys got to go to the show notes, because I'm a podcaster too, and I know what needs to happen, people. So go to the show notes here, and I will get you access to the 5-minute authority story course, and you can start telling better stories right away.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think if somebody ever asked me that question that I asked you before about manipulation, all that, I'm going to record a clip, or I'm just going to take the clip and say, go watch this clip with Kyle. There's your answer right there. So I don't ever have to answer that question again. So
yeah, I want to just to tag this off, and like just to like put a little bow tie on this. Like, sales is a divine responsibility. Like, you are here to make the world better, and it is your job to, like, you have something to help people, and you should see it as that. Like, this is your mission and your purpose, and it has to come out to live your life right. That's where we want to be coming from. We don't want sales to be pushy or desperate. We need this to be our imperative, what we are here for. And you are calling people to the levels that you want in your ideal clients. And so, yeah, I just want to like cap that off with that.
Yeah, totally agree.
And to find out more about your work, can you maybe share your website? And I know you have a great podcast called The Story Engine as well. Maybe you can just share a few more details so people know how to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. You can go to my website, thestoryengine.co, learn more about my books. My most popular one is also called The Story Engine. And amazingly, coincidentally, my podcast is also called The Story Engine Podcast. So you can check out interviews with storytelling experts. We just published Kylie's at the time that we're recording this episode. And I speak with thought leaders every week on topics just like this. So thank you so much. And also, hey, Kyle Gray on Instagram, if you want some extra behind the scenes of my life.
Amazing.
Cool.
Thanks, Kyle. And thanks to all the listeners. If you want to get all the links and all the show notes, you can go to consciousmarketer.com/podcast. We'll post the episode there and the links to everything he does. And thanks for listening. We really appreciate you being in the Conscious Marketer community, listening on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you have found this. All we ask is you go to iTunes or Spotify and leave a review, honest review, because that's how we get out there and create more impact. Thanks again, Kyle, for being on our show today.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Kyle. Bye, everybody.